Let's dig into it. And we're going to start off. I have been waiting to since I saw this story show up on Twitter the other day. I've been waiting to read it just so I could do a nice little reaction with you guys for effed up news, because that's part of what effed up news is. Like, I generally am reacting to this stuff in real time. I try to find stories that I think sound a little bit crazy, and I read them in real time. Let me see. I'm just trying to mess with something is going on with my audio today. Is it Mercury retrograde? Oh God, please don't let it be Mercury. It's like an eclipse or something. That's what's really going on. Let's read this. How right-wing extremists weaponized the idea of motherhood. Women play a more significant role in far-right extremist movements than is often acknowledged. This is on MSNBC because, of course, it is. Let's read. A new, hang on. Yes. A new report on the January 6th Capitol attack published this month by researchers at George Washington University detailed the role that women have played in the American far-right extremism over the past century, including how many are leaning heavily into their identities as mothers to justify their engagement and to recruit and mobilize others. So women who have children are calling themselves mothers, and this is a problem? I mean, isn't that kind of like a key part of their role? Oh, you know what, Judy, you're right. It wouldn't be next weekend. It'd be the weekend after. Judy is correct. Judy is correct. I got confused. Okay, we'll work all that out in locals, Judy. Don't worry about it. Women play a more significant role in far-right extremist movements than is often acknowledged. The 102 women who have been arrested in connection with the attack as of mid-March represent 13% of January 6th federal cases, the report found. Some faced felony charges and others faced misdemeanors. Around 10% of them are accused of having either engaged in or conspired in violence. Their alleged behavior on January 6th is consistent with what experts have argued for years, namely that women play a more significant role in far-right extremist movements than is often acknowledged. Extremist scenes and movements recruit and engage women for a variety of reasons. Women are a useful way of softening or rebranding the face of violent or supremacist movements in ways that can both recruit both men and other women. Well, we have to be really clear about what they mean by both violent and supremacist movements, because as we know, January 6th actually had nothing to do with white supremacy at all. It had to do with a couple people, probably feds, starting a riot and then blaming it on Trump supporters. They have also been used statistically to try to depict government responses to actions, protests, or violence as overreaching. The Southern Poverty Law Center reported that during a standoff with the federal government in 2014, one anti-government group used women as human shields, noting the significant media attention would follow if federal agents started shooting at women. Well, okay, I don't know the veracity of any of this because this is before my red pill time. But what I will say is that for a title of an article to argue that women are weaponizing the idea of motherhood, and as not yet having said anything about why they're focusing on motherhood specifically, they're just talking about women in general. I mean, you can always pick out fringe cases if you need to, but they actually haven't yet focused on the idea of mothers at all. But above all, women have historically engaged in extremist movements through their domestic roles and identity as wives, daughters, and mothers. They use the roles to support backstage activities like sewing KKK hoods. Did women generally do that backstage? I mean, I'm not defending the practice. I'm just asking, like, wouldn't the hoods have already been so okay? Cooking meals for gatherings and homeschooling children. Oh my God, it's the evil homeschoolers of children. And don't you think, we're going to actually talk about homeschooling again a little bit later. Don't you think for one red second they aren't coming after homeschooling? Of course they are. But also to mobilize men as protectors of their purity and vulnerability in the face of a range of purported threats. So another thing this article is then going after is the idea of like traditional roles. Now, of course, like I don't actually subscribe to this traditional gender role stuff that's going on the conservative right. However, I don't really care if people do. If people want to have traditional gender roles in their relationships with the men as the provider and the protector and the little woman who's pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen making them a sandwich, that is their choice. They should be able to live their lives however they want. But to me, it seems like they're attacking those traditional gender roles as a way to own the far right, because that's, of course, what they do. Oh, finally, we're getting to motherhood. Excellent. Motherhood plays an especially key role in the kinds of rhetorical strategies far right extremists use, including the kind of utopian propaganda that calls on followers to reject modernity and embrace traditional values and roles. But women aren't called upon to be entirely passive as mothers or to be relegated. There it is. Oh my God. Relegated. That's the word I'm looking for. Or to be relegated completely to domestic tasks. Rather, motherhood is used to justify women's engagement in activism and to depoliticize their actions by positioning them as acting on behalf of their children and families. Well, God forbid that women act on behalf of their children and families. I mean, why aren't they arguing that every time a Democrat runs for school board, a Democratic woman mother runs for school board, they're acting on behalf of their children and families? Are the Democratic women just doing it out of the goodness of their own heart, but the Republican women, oh my God, they're evil. They're weaponizing the idea of motherhood. How dare they? Themes about the need to protect children are especially powerful in drawing women into extreme and even violent action, as illustrated by the rise of conspiracy theories and propaganda that mobilized mothers around themes of child exploitation and protection. Is MSNBC actually arguing in favor of child exploitation? Listen, I don't have a kid. I don't even like kids. I don't want a kid. I am perfectly happy being a childless woman. Perfectly happy. I have money. I have time. I don't have crying. I don't have there's so many benefits to not having children, and I have no regrets. And if there's like an accident of some sort, we'll deal with that another time. But like, I'm actually not in favor of child exploitation. I'm not in favor of children being indoctrinated. Like, you don't even have to like kids to understand that just on a societal level, it is not good for children to be indoctrinated in public schools. That doesn't bode well for us and the future of our civilization on just a very practical level. Some women have been drawn into QAnon through relatively banal entry points like wellness blogs and yoga studios, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. In these spaces, healthy skepticism of traditional medicine and a propensity for alternative models of wellness can create inadvertent gateways to an entire rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and disinformation, much of which calls on women to protect children. Dude, okay, let me tell you what. As someone that actually does read wellness blogs and, well, contrary to rumors started on the internet last night, does not go to yoga studios, even though apparently some people think I go to yoga studios, but I promise you I do not. But I do read wellness blogs and all that woo-woo type of stuff. Let me tell you what, that's one of the most woke audiences that exists in the world. Those are not QAnon conspiracy theorists. I'm sorry. Like woo-woo wellness blogs and like things that are outside of like traditional medicine, those are incredibly liberal, incredibly leftist, and incredibly woke. And if you're not in that category, you are going to find out right quick that most of the people you interact with in those communities are. Yeah, yoga is now a right-wing conspiracy theory. That's right. That's right. And apparently the best yoga retreats in the world are in England. Who knew? We were informed of this on Twitter last night. Who knew, guys? Mom lifestyle influencers who have embraced the QAnon conspiracy have integrated posts about child trafficking into their regular content feeds with home decorating, cooking, and child rearing tips, a challenge for parenting website editors who have reported an uptick in conspiracy theory posts. QAnon moms, for example, have helped fuel women's engagement in conspiracy-fueled violence, including allegations of kidnapping or plots to kidnap children because they believe they were rescuing them from, the thing that starts with P. I need to come up with a euphemism for that. Rings or Satan worshipping groups. using the hashtag save the Is this where this comes from? Wait. Is this where this comes from? Does this save the children thing come from QAnon? No, really, I'm really asking because, like, with all the Disney stuff that happened last week, my feet and me kind of going off on conservatives and being like, you guys don't really believe in free speech or lower taxes or small government. So my entire Twitter feed last week was filled with people saying, save the children. Is this QAnon? Is that a QAnon thing? I'm honestly asking. Because I had not put two and two together last week when I was talking about like the Disney stuff and seeing a metric F ton of replies saying, save the children. I didn't put it together, but now I'm starting to put it together. I don't know. The rise of conspiracies that manipulate mothers' fears about their own children and mobilize them to violent action or political engagement is a look at this. Holy shit. Look at this sentence. Look at this sentence. They are actually equating mothers taking violent action or being politically engaged. Look at the juxtaposition here. I'm going to read this sentence again and just like notice the juxtaposition between violent action and political engagement, which is supposed to be a good thing, by the way. It is actually supposed to be a good thing to be politically engaged and astute and paying attention to what's going on. But no, they're going to equate it to taking violent action when it comes to mothers. The rise of conspiracy theories that manipulate mothers' fears about their own children and mobilize them to violent action or political engagement is a troubling trend. Why does MSNBC think that mothers being politically engaged is a troubling trend? Isn't that telling? Isn't that telling that means that we should absolutely double down on the mom army that Chris Rufo's trying to mobilize? But mobilizing motherhood is not new. After the September 11th attacks, one of the most popular pieces of amateur propaganda, as Wired described in 2001, depicted Mommy Liberty, a gun-toting Statue of Liberty holding a child swathed in an American flag. During her 2008 vice presidential run, Sarah Palin coined the term Mama Grizzlies to refer to conservative women who will protect their children from bad government policies. On the extremist fringe, women still represent the significant minority of violent and non-violent engagement. So all engagement. Because guys, guess what? Like all engagement of any type is either violent or non-violent. Like, is there a third answer? Kind of violent, semi-violent, sort of violent? What do I think of the Disinformation Governance Board? I'm not going to cover this today because like everyone and their mother has covered it, but it's Orwellian as hell. It is the most Orwellian thing I've ever seen in my life. And I just wanted to answer that because I knew I was going to get that question because I'm not covering it. No, this Disinformation Governance Board is the most Orwellian thing I've ever heard of in my life. The minute that the government starts telling you what is true and what's not true is the minute that the government is regulating what you can believe and what you can think and what you can say and what ideas you can consider and what is socially acceptable. And it is absolutely ridiculous. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if Republicans actually fight back. I'm going to guess they don't because they never do. By the way, I was actually thinking about this. And this is just a thought I want to throw out there to see what you guys think. So I was thinking about this earlier because I have a lot of like conservatives. Like, okay, anytime graphically Alex and I did Sassy Saturday last night, and we've done Sassy Saturday the last couple of weeks. And Sassy Saturday is a drama stream. It's entirely drama. We're bitches. We are awful. We are gossipy. It is a drama stream. That is the purpose of Sassy Saturday. And every single time we've done Sassy Saturday, I have conservatives commenting on it going, how dare you engage in drama? And I'm like, do you watch the other 6 days a week of content that I do? Like, you only ever engage in drama. I'm like, I have 6 other days a week of content that is not dramatic at all in any way. And so they get really angry about this. And anyway, I was thinking about this earlier and I was like, why is it always universally conservatives who tell me that I should consent to my own bullying, which is exactly what they're telling me when they say, don't engage in drama. They're saying basically, you should consent to your own bullying and you shouldn't stand up for yourself. I think the reason I hear that from conservatives is because conservatives have consented to their own bullying for decades. They've consented to be bullied by the left for decades and decades and decades, and they never stand up for themselves. And I think that this whole governance board thing is actually one of the prime examples of that. Are we going to see the Republicans stand up and fight back against what is obviously an Orwellian overreach to create an establishment within the government that tells us what ideas we can consider? Are conservatives going to do anything? Are Republicans going to do anything? Because if they're not, they are literally consenting to their own bullying. That's what they're doing. And so it's like, I think that the reason that conservatives are like totally complain every time I stand up and defend myself against internet nonsense and bullshit is because they are perfectly happy being bullied and they think everyone else should exist in that space. It's actually kind of like a weird thing. Yeah, I think Gremlin, this is exactly right. This is like, it's like political Stockholm syndrome. It really is. People on the right have got to get over it, man. They really do. It's bad. People have got to start standing up for themselves. I will never apologize for standing up for myself because I want to be an example of people who can stand up for themselves, of people who do speak up when nonsense is going on. Emphasize says you aren't allowed to block anyone if you're elected governor. I'm not going to be elected governor. Everyone needs to get rid of that hope and dream right now. It is not going to happen. Now, I'll run for governor, don't get me wrong. I will. I am, technically. But I'm not going to get elected governor, so that's not really going to be an eventuality that I have to worry about. Anyway, nope, I'm not Jennifer. I'm talking about conservatives. Actually, more conservative than Rhino. More conservative than Rhinos stick up for themselves sometimes. Conservatives do not. Anyway, let's go back to this. And to be clear, women also are often victims of tremendous misogyny, harassment, or worse, at the hands of men within these movements. Kathleen Blee's research on women in white supremacist movements has described racist skinhead men who refer to women in their groups as oi toys and who are proud to dominate their wives and girlfriends. Well, sometimes, and we covered this last night on Sassy Saturday as well, sometimes women need to be dominated because it actually makes them more powerful in real life. I'm just saying. I'm not defending the type of domination they're talking about there, but I'm just saying. But it is important to recognize the ways that motherhood is used to recruit and defend women's engagement in violent or anti-democratic movements, including trying to mitigate culpability in criminal or violent responses. Well, speaking of anti-democratic movements, let me just ask, do a poll in the chat. I'm going to do a poll, okay? Let me see. Do you believe that multiple choice on the ballot? Yes. No. So basically what I'm asking, guys, is do you believe, okay, so first off, we are not a democracy. We're a republic. But let's just exist in this fantasy land for a second that we are a democracy. In order for a democracy to function, would you agree that you need to have multiple candidates listed on the ballot with which to give the voters a choice about who their elected representatives are? Now, this is not a trick question, I swear to God. Do you believe that in order for a democracy to function, that requires multiple choices on the ballot and then people show up and they vote for whoever they want and then the person who gets the most votes win? Is that generally how it's supposed to go? Do I have that confused? It looks like about 94% of you in the chat agree with me. 94% of you agree that democracy requires choices. Here's why I bring this up. So I did signature. I'm going to be doing a lot of signature gathering over the next several months because we need to basically collect about 5,000 signatures in New Hampshire in order to get me and Jeremy Kauffman actually listed on the ballot to be for me for governor and him for Senate. His race is a lot more important than mine, but it's on the same form, so it's the same thing. So we're doing a lot of signature gathering. Basically, we go outside and we stand outside a supermarket and we say, will you help us get a third party on the ballot? And people either sign or they don't. Now, what's interesting about this experience that I had doing this last weekend was that you could always tell who the Democrats were Because the first off, they'd be wearing a mask outside where they don't need to. And when you ask them to sign the petition, they would go, "No, I absolutely will not endorse another candidate on the ballot." And I would always yell at them as they were like stomping away in a huff. I'd be like, "Democracy requires choices. Why don't you want a democracy?" And the reason I say this is because, I've seen now directly through my own experience that most or at least the Democratic voters that I encountered in New Hampshire have no desire for a democracy at all. No desire at all in any way. They want Democrats to be the only people that are actually allowed on the ballot. Liz Craft says, "Come to the Hudson Market Basket." I think we're doing Bedford next week, but we do have a standing invitation from Market Basket to basically go to whatever Market Basket we want to do this. So maybe I'll hit Hudson at some point. Anyway, let's keep going. The GWU report analyzed how motherhood is used in women's January 6th legal defense to make women appear more sympathetic by emphasizing their caretaking roles and status as good mothers and grandmothers who are devoted to their husbands and families. God forbid that women have a defense when they're accused of egregious crimes under the January 6th Commission or whatever the hell. Such defense strategies paint a picture of these women as nurturers who love their families and are committed to raising productive citizens in an attempt to outweigh the serious charges they face. It's easy to understand why calling on women to protect their children from unimaginable harm is effective. But that's also what makes it so dangerous. Because motherhood itself is being used to manipulate women and to recruit and mobilize and justify violent and anti-democratic actions. How dare they? So, per usual, as is the case with MSNBC, they wrote a lot of words, but they didn't actually say anything of substance.